Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Price on Purpose. I am your host, Stacy Price, and I'm joined today with the amazing Kellan Fluckiger. He's an executive, keynote speaker, he's a catalyst and author, and I'm so glad to have him here today. Kellan, how are you doing?
I'm fantastic. And the first thing I want to do is acknowledge you and be grateful for your choice to add good to the world. You know, there's so many things that we do besides add carbon dioxide by breathing, and your choice to be a light, to be a beacon, to be a voice of hope, and to add good to the world is something that warms my heart. So thank you.
Oh, thank you as well. I appreciate that. Yeah, I realize, in this day and age, there's a lot going on, and I think that's become a normal phrase for some to say with everything going on. And we become sometimes attached to that. So I was so grateful when I believe her name is Angel reached out to me and said, "Look, I got this great guest," and I was like, "Oh my God, I got to speak to this guy." So thank you.
You're absolutely welcome, and I'm delighted to be here.
Awesome. Awesome. So tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Who I am today is
Awesome.
not what you would think if you look at everything that came before. And in the pre-show where we were chatting, you talked about the opportunity for people to change. And the fundamental premise is the future is unwritten and you can have whatever you want. It's not an extension of the past unless you allow it. So who I am today is not an extension of all the things that happened in the early decades of my life. I'll be 66 in 15 minutes. Well, about 3 weeks, 10th of December. So, if you saw me 20 years ago, or 30 years ago, 40 years ago, even as recently as 15 years ago, you would have seen a completely different person. So who I am today is a catalyst for growth and change. I'm committed to helping 10 million people discover, develop, and manifest their divine gifts in the service of others. That's who I am today.
I love that. And I love the way you said it, who you are today. I think sometimes we attach to, and I did it myself, I attached to who I thought I was at that moment. And I felt that I had to keep that and identify with that. And therefore, anything else that I felt would serve me, I actually blocked it. Did you have that moment in yourself where you attached to one version or one idea of who you were and said, I have to be this?
It wasn't a moment, it was 40 years. I was raised in a a very religious home with discipline that today would be felony child abuse, and we would have been removed from the home. And those years it was discipline. But the thing that it brought to me was a conviction, a truth that I was not good enough and never would be. So despite the fact that I was blessed with ridiculous brains, I believed to the core of my soul that I sucked. And I would not be okay no matter what I did. So I spent all of my adult life, I rebelled against the discipline. I was terrified. The idea of complaining to someone never crossed your mind. I was so scared of my mother, who was the one that actually was the person. I was so scared of her that even when I was a teenager, I'm certainly big enough to take care of myself physically, I didn't and wouldn't. I remember getting dressed in the locker room at high school last because I didn't want anybody to see the black and blue on me. So I was that frightened of just the whole situation. So out of that, I began, at a young age, looking for escape and experimenting with drugs and things, not because of peer pressure or anything, but just as an escape route. I lived for 40 years, from 13 to 53, trying to get my mother's approval. And what that looked like was making lots of money, which wasn't good because then that's bad because evil people have lots of money. I was blessed with musical talent. I wanted to be a musician, but musicians are drug addicts and they're promiscuous, so don't do that. And I became my mother's worst nightmare. I eventually closed the studio I was running and pursued a corporate career. And in that context, I made a lot of money and had a lot of big high-ranking positions, la-di-da. I hated my life, and I never got the stamp of approval in the forehead. And that went on and on and on and up and down until it exploded in 2007.
Wow, you're speaking some things that I find personal as well in my story, like looking for the approval from a parent or parents. So I actually, if you don't mind, how do you deal with that now? Like, how do you well, let me ask you this first. That feeling of looking for approval from parents, has that left you?
Completely.
Mm. And how are you able to say that?
Love.
Mm,
Here's what I now know, and I'm going to say this really slow so that your listeners have time to digest it.
mm,
We individually don't have either power or
mm,
the calling, the responsibility to create justice or extract punishment or create reconciliation. We don't have that power. That's left to
mm,
the divine. And I'm actually grateful for that. I don't want to be in charge of that anyway, because I'm sure my view is all warped. So
mm,
what has happened is I now understand to the core of my soul that me, you, my mom, my dad, my sibs, every person I talk to is on their own individual journey, and that the best that
mm,
I can do is love them as they are now and not
mm,
expect anything.
mm. Huge, huge. I love that. It's freeing, would you say?
I've got nobody to worry about except the good that I can bring to the world. And that is freeing. I'm completely liberated. When I get up in the morning, I have a big, long 2.5 hour morning ritual. And I do it
Mm,
on purpose because it prepares me to be the best that I can be today. But I wrote
mm,
it. It's who I want to be. And then I talk to you, and I'm on a mastermind later today. And then I just did a podcast episode on my podcast. And I'm working on some of those 8 books, and I'm working in the recording studio, which is over there. And
yeah,
I'm doing all of that because I want to and in service of that 10 million. And so I
yes.
have no space for that negative weight. My backpack is
Mm,
empty.
I love that. That sounds amazing. It's so funny because I think I can't even say right now where the idea, I can't say the moment it started uh in my journey where I realized, or I didn't realize, that I was going along with what I thought I had to do. Like, you have to get a good job. Good job. You know what I mean? You have to get, kids and, your partner, and it has to go like this. I don't know when. I can't say when, but I do know when I started to release that idea. So for you, because you were this executive and working and making lots of money and everything. So do you know, like, how did you, I guess, get that idea? And then how did you realize you can and should transition out of that?
I was so blinded
Mm,
and consumed by the idea, two conflicting ideas.
mhm,
One, that somehow if I made enough money, I would be okay, was one
mhm,
idea. And the other one was I suck anyway at a fundamental level, so it doesn't really matter. And those are conflicting
mm,
ideas.
mm,
But I was so consumed by those two things
mhm,
that I made a lot of money. Like, between the contracts I had, I was making easily over $1 million. I mean, just lots of money. And I'll tell you some of the
mhm,
stories. But I was so consumed in that I was not able, I didn't even have a hint of how to stop, how to change, or how to begin. I mean, I was a full-on train wreck, speeding at outrageous speed toward the 5,000-foot concrete barrier. And what it took for me, and I'm not suggesting, and I hope it's not that way for everyone, is it took a train wreck, a divine intervention that took place in 2007 to invite, and my discovery is that the divine never makes us do anything. It's always an invitation to invite me to consider a radical change. And so that's what it took in August of 2007 on a Friday night. I mean, like I remember it like it was yesterday.
It's so interesting. My awakening started in August of 2005, and I'm still waking up. You know, I find it interesting that yours was in August of '07. Tell me what happened in August of '07.
I was at the height of my career. I mean, like if you Google my name, I've testified before Congress. I've had C-level positions in the United States and Canada. I even had a contract with the Queen of England when I was doing some work up here in Canada. So I was at the height of all that. Yeehaw! I was also divorced for the third time. I was single for the third time. I had 4 teenage kids living with me as a single dad. I was also a $3,000 a week cocaine addict. And I had been to secret rehabs for superpower executives. I never got caught and fired, but I had done, it was just this sort of mishmash of disaster. So I got home on Friday night in August of 2007. And if I went and looked at the calendar, I could figure out the date. But one of the Fridays in August, and I got home and I was getting ready to go out and party binge for the weekend. I mean, $3,000 is a lot of blow. And so that's,
it sounds like a lot.
It's terrifying. So anyway, I got ready to go out, and for some reason, I had this incredible urge to turn on the television. And that's only funny when you realize that I never watched TV, and I had the biggest one you could buy, and I had the people who you buy it from come and install it and do all the stuff, right? But I realized when I had this terrible urge that I didn't know how to turn it on. So I had to get one of my daughters to come and turn it on. And of course, she's 16 and, disgusting, threw the remote at me, right? Okay, so she turned on the TV, and the show that was accidentally on was a reality TV show called Intervention. And if you know what that is, that's a reality TV show about people that stage interventions for busted relatives, right? Well, I didn't know anything, so it was on. I'm like, well. So the protagonist on the show was a high-ranking executive with a cocaine problem. So I watched about 10 minutes and I said, screw this. I'm not watching this crap. And I turned it off and I went around, puttered around the house for another 20, 30 minutes and got ready to go. I was going out, which would have been probably all weekend somewhere. But I couldn't leave. I had to turn the TV back on. Now, this time I knew how to do that. So I turned the TV back on, and that program started over in the middle of the hour. And no, I don't have a DVR, and no, it wasn't on the schedule, and no, it can't do that, but it did. So it scared the crap out of me, and I thought I should watch this. So I watched it. It did not go well. The person turned down all the help, got mad at his family, and stomped off. It didn't go well, but it scared me enough that I went to bed instead of going out. And then I went to hell. And what happened is I went to bed, and then I went somewhere, I don't know where. And for the next X amount of time, I was in a place where all of the parade of addictions and divorces, and I'd become a pathological liar to protect myself. All of that stuff sort of paraded before my eyes, not screaming at me, but the guilt and remorse that I felt for all the pain that I'd caused was the most intense suffering of my existence. After some period of time, there was a voice that said, "It is enough." And it was not an angry voice or a yelling voice. It simply said, "It is enough." I woke up, and it was 5:00 Saturday afternoon. So it had lasted about 17 and a half or 18 hours. I got up and realized that I had been invited to change. And so I threw away $1,000 worth of stuff that I had. And I went cold turkey from $3,000 a week to zero in one day. That was the last time I ever touched it.
Mm.
That was the first half of the divine intervention, and it got me sober. The thing
Mm.
that it did not do was anything about the depression that I had never spoken to anyone about. Like, why did I
Right.
self-sabotage? Why was I married and divorced 3 times? Why was I such a wreck? I didn't know, and I had never talked to anyone. So the
Mm.
second half of the divine intervention was 2 weeks later. In the positions I had, I was like any high-ranking executive, you get free stuff. So people give you
Mm-hmm.
free tickets to this and free expensive bottles of wine, whatever, right? All kinds of stuff.
Mm.
And so one of the things I got was I got a pair of tickets to see a concert by Yo-Yo Ma, who's a classical
Oh my
cellist.
God, my favorite. All right, continue. Go ahead.
All right, so I got a pair of tickets to see Yo-Yo Ma, and if you
Yeah.
know who he is, you know, and if
Yes.
you don't, you don't, right? All
Yeah.
right. So I didn't want to waste the other ticket because I'm
Yeah.
single again for the third time. So I went to
Right.
the groups that I managed and I said,
Mm-hmm.
who likes classical music? And some lady in one of the groups said, I do. And I looked down and I said, have I ever given you anything before? And she said, no. And I said, all right, fine. Here, see you there. So we met at the venue and the concert was spectacular. And halfway through the concert, and I'm stone cold sober now for 2 weeks.
Mm.
Halfway through the concert, I had this feeling come over me and I recognized it from 2 weeks before. And a voice in my head said, you need to marry this woman.
Huh.
And I said, you're insane. I said, first of all, you've got to have your wires crossed. I've screwed that up a bunch of times already and I suck. So there's got to be a mistake, right? And so then later that night, we were backstage because, of course, there were backstage passes. And so we got to meet everybody and do all that stuff. And the feeling voice came back and said, comma, and you need to tell her tonight.
What?
And I protested violently, but
No.
you don't win those arguments.
Right. Right.
So I did, and it went about like you would have expected. I mean, she could have sued me for sexual harassment or whatever because she worked in
Mm.
some group that I did. She didn't do anything. It went about like you would have expected. Are you crazy? What are you talking about? But within 2 weeks, she'd had her own set of experiences, and we both walked away from our existing careers and into the sunset, and that was 14 years ago.
Mm.
And her name is Joy. I mean, you can't make this stuff up,
What?
right? And so she
Yo.
was the angel that was sent to
Oh
help me through
man.
the battle to figure out mental illness and depression and the struggle and so the first several years were very difficult, but she
Mm.
was all in. And I've asked her a bunch of times, what on earth possessed you? I mean, she had a very vibrant career. She was well thought of, making
Mm.
good coin. To just walk away from that and walk off. Everybody in the office knew I was on drugs. They didn't know for sure, but everybody had rumors, right?
Mm-hmm.
She said, I don't know, except for I just knew to the core of my soul it was the right thing to do.
Wow.
So that was the
Man.
other half of the invitation.
Yeah.
And that was
Wow.
14 years ago.
Mm. Amen. Oh man. What? Wow. I love this for you, and I love this moment because you're speaking about something that I haven't touched upon yet in my show. I say our show. It's our show right now. But there's a voice that if you're receptive, it comes up in these little like these moments. Like it's like I don't know how to describe it, Kellan. But I've heard that voice. And the thing is I used to push it down. Like I would literally because I would smoke cannabis. I would drink a lot, heavily, black out. You know what I mean? And I would silence it on purpose. It scared me. It terrified me. But that voice just louder, louder, louder. And why does it happen in those moments? It's I don't know. It saves you, literally.
Well, if
Literally.
you think about it from the point of view of the creator, it happens in those moments because they're moments of exigency, they're moments of serious trouble, and they're moments when we perhaps are more receptive to the invitation. What I
Mm,
know and you know is that nobody ever makes you. The divine doesn't ever make you do anything. But those invitations are always loud enough to cause us to pause and then make a choice. And the
mm,
choice we make is ignore them, call them something else, push them down. And I've
mm,
done that a million times.
mm.
Or to say, holy crap, this is scary. What next?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
that choice is for everybody, and you all have heard it, and you know exactly what I'm talking about, and it will come to you again because you are a divine creation and you were sent here not to screw up and do whatever. You had gifts and talents, you have them,
Mm,
and you have a purpose. And your
yes.
choice at those moments is to lean in or push it away.
Yes. My God. Ah, you're like so refreshing. Thank you. Like that's the thing because it's so funny. I am someone that has experienced, and I have these moments where I experience the pain of being unworthy, or the illusion, I should say, illusion of being unworthy. And then I have these other moments where it's like, you got this. And it's these moments of unbelievable clarity. Like I'm witty. It's like I see myself like I'm witty. I'm smart. I'm funny. I'm all these amazing things. And then I have this like weird mist that comes in and tries to like hide it. You know what I mean? So how do you get now into being able to, so is it these moments where you write all these books, these moments of unbelievable clarity? Like how did you write all these books? Where is that coming from?
So I'm going to answer you from the depths of my heart to the depths of yours.
Mm,
You, as a divine being, have the ability to create those moments of clarity.
mm,
We don't have to wait until they accidentally come or until some
mm,
confluence of circumstance brings them. What I have learned, and this is where I really focus my coaching with each person. A person owns a business, they come because they want to make more money or they come for whatever reason. But what it always turns into is a choice about who you're being in the world. Now, I want you
mm,
to imagine just a minute any business owner, you as a podcast provider, I don't care who you are, anybody you ever know, if
mm.
that person chose to do the things every single morning that created that clarity, that connected
Yes.
them with their divine purpose and set them on fire for that day, and they did it every day, what would happen to that person?
Mm, mm,
They would explode with productivity, clarity. They would do the things that they know they want to do. And that would happen every day. Why? Because they did that preparation every morning.
yeah,
That's why my morning ritual is 2.5 hours.
I love it.
I do that work every day. It's not magic. And when I work with people, it is to create their system to do that so that
Mm,
they have something they own viscerally to
yes,
be that.
I love it. Yes. It's so interesting. I used to look up videos online on the miracle morning, and this is what it should look like. And I realized with all of these people, that whether CEO, business owner, whatever they did, where they created something amazing, dare I say, or whatever, it was some of them got up at 5, some 4, some 3, some 2. But I realized that everybody has their thing. It doesn't have to look the way it looks for the other person, but it does have to look a way that it looks for you to do what you need to do. I love that yours is 2 hours. Me, I'm like, all right, Stacey, you only got 1 hour and 30 minutes. Like, figure it out. I guess I need to That's
Well, it
something I can,
evolves. When I
yeah.
start with somebody, I use a framework called SPEM, SPEM, spiritual, physical, emotional, mental. And I
Mm,
say, you want to create a morning ritual that will power you up? This arbitrary, you can break life up any way you want to, but I use SPEM, spiritual, physical,
mm,
emotional, mental. And I say,
mm,
start with 10 minutes each. So do some spiritual practice that you like, that you enjoy. If you want some suggestions, my first 5 books were on meditation. I can teach you how to meditate. Maybe you have scriptures, maybe you pray, maybe you do
mm,
whatever. But my question is, when you do that thing that you do for 10 minutes, is it empty or does it feel good? And if the answer is, well, it's just kind of something I've always done, okay, that sucks. Let's find something. Let's either turn that into something or find something that makes you feel connected to the divine.
mhm,
Okay, good. So spend 10 minutes doing that. Then 10 minutes honoring your body. Now, that isn't, I don't care if you're going to go work out later or play tennis or stand on your head.
mm,
Spend 10 minutes stretching, waking up, honoring your body in a
mm,
physical way. You can do a lot on 10 minutes of Florex yoga or
right.
whatever. The E 10 minutes is all of your relationships, stands for emotional. What I do, for example, and
Mm,
this is what I help people start with, is think during your meditation time of 2 or 3 people that you either want to love, where you need to make a repair attempt, where you need to do something. And if you don't have anybody, scroll through your Facebook Messenger or whatever. And when you're inspired, just love someone. Do something intentional to cultivate, strengthen, or repair
mm,
relationships that matter. The
mm,
M is mental. I have 30 books that I'm in the middle of reading.
mhm,
One of the things I've created is a system for reading really fast, so I read a ridiculous number of books.
yeah,
But it doesn't matter. I take 10 minutes, is where I start. Mine's
right.
a lot longer than that. But
Mhm,
I read a chapter or 2 or 3 or 5 in a book, and it doesn't
mhm,
matter. It's one of, I literally have 30 books over there that I got, and my wife's brother is moving, they're downsizing, and so he used to buy all kinds of books,
mm,
big thick ones, quantum physics, and that. So I'm reading some of those,
yeah,
and I'll just read some chapters in that
right.
to do that. And so SPEM, that 40 minutes to start with, can and then mess with them until they do that, because the goal is when you get done with that, you feel alive. You
Yes.
feel connected. You feel a sense of beingness. The other part of that is to write something that I call a PTAC,
Mm,
personal truth and commitment statement. A personal truth and commitment statement is just a series of declarations about who you are. I am honesty and speak only truth. Okay, who said so? Well, I did. Are you perfect? Of course not. Every time I fail in that, I fix it and recommit. Why? Because I
mm,
said so.
mhm,
Because that's who I have said I am. So it's a declarative process.
yes,
And so I read
absolutely.
that every morning. I connect with that. I do that ritual. And there's 27 different versions of it. But the
Mm,
purpose is I have chosen who I want to be in the world. And I do the things after sleep that make me be that. So that when
mhm,
I talk to you or write in books or work in the studio or do whatever, it
mhm,
comes from that place.
yes, absolutely. Tell me about, and do you have a book that you feel is the one that you're, would you say is the best book, or read this book first?
So let me answer that question an unexpected way.
Mm,
It depends on what you want to do. So the
makes
first
sense.
5 books I wrote were on meditation.
Mhm,
So if they're a series, if you want to learn that practice, we don't meditate to get good at meditation. We meditate to get good at life. So if you want to learn that powerful practice, that would be the place to start.
mm,
If you want to read about my years of depression,
mm,
Tightrope of Depression, my journey from darkness, despair, and death to light, love, and life would be the place to start.
mm,
If you want to learn about a business book, from my consulting years, I wrote the results equation, from dream to done in 5 simple steps. If you want to write a book, I wrote a book called The Story Arc, which is a book about
mm,
how to write books. If you want
mm.
to read something otherworldly, then 3 years ago, I
I
contracted a
like it. I
fatal
like
illness
that.
and died. And so I wrote
Mm,
Meeting God at the Door,
mm,
Conversations, Choices, and Commitments of a Near Death Experience. So it
mm,
depends on, and I just finished the first draft One of the 8 that I'm working on is titled Forgiveness, a journey of
Mm,
courage to a place of freedom and power. That'll be out in
mm,
February. So it
mm.
depends on what you're trying to do.
I love it. You gotta put me like, look, this and this. But the beauty of this is creating these moments where people have the ability to connect with you and to connect with themselves. I think sometimes, I think, who is it? David Goggins said, our minds are the one thing that we don't exercise enough. We kind of just go. We're on a wheel. It's like we're on a hamster wheel. We just go. We don't go. We don't stop and say why, how, what, who. It's only recently now that I'm in my 30s that I started to ask those questions. In my 20s, I would have moments, but I would you know what I mean? It's
Yes.
so interesting in human development. How do you see human development, meaning age? Like, how do you see it? Does that make sense?
I have no idea how to answer that question.
Mm,
Here's what I know. I know that every one of us was created by the divine.
mhm,
I know that we all start in different places. Some start
mhm,
in favorable circumstances, some start in not so favorable circumstances. Some
mhm,
have physical challenges and mental challenges to start with, some don't. What
mhm,
I know is that is important is the slope of our growth, not where we started. What I know is that it's never too late, no matter where you've been or what you've been through. I know those things,
mhm,
and that you control the slope of your growth.
mhm,
I know
mhm,
that you get what you look for, no
mhm,
matter what excuses or stories you tell yourself. You find what you look for.
mhm. Absolutely, and very well said. Yes. So on this show, we talk a lot about purpose, and I think you kind of hinted upon how you found yours and how that happened. But why is it important to live life on purpose in your eyes?
Well, I love the name of your podcast.
Hmm.
Purpose is in there, and you talked
Hmm.
about that in the intro.
Hmm.
Why is it important? Let's look at an acorn. An acorn has its purpose built into it, so it
Hmm.
grows into a tree. If
Hmm.
it didn't and it needed to find it, an acorn turning into a porpoise might not be very useful, right? Or a snail.
Hmm.
Finding the purpose is the greatest manifestation of who we can be.
Hmm.
Like the gifts we were given were so that we could live this purpose.
Hmm.
So if we go I don't I, people talk to me a lot and they say stuff like, well, I just don't have clarity. If I had clarity, then I'd know what to do.
Hmm.
And I got so frustrated at hearing that. I said, well, clarity is overrated. It is
Hmm.
not found, it is created.
Yes.
And so the answer is, if you want clarity, start doing things.
Hmm.
Because when you start doing things, you discover very quickly if this is energizing and reinforcing, if it
Hmm.
has the intended outcome, if you feel closer or further from the divine, if you're of
Hmm.
more or less service in the world. But you
Hmm.
can't find it. You don't go dig it up in the yard like you're on a safari.
Right. Right. Absolutely. It's so interesting. I love that you even touched upon that because, you know, even me, I would have moments, or I used to have these moments where I'm like, okay, if I just had this thing, then I could do this and I could do that. You know what? Can't do that yet because it just doesn't feel right, or maybe I need to wait. You know, talk to me about the delay in creating.
Well, I can't speak for everyone. I
Hmm.
know that I have one of the coaching frameworks I use is called Break the Cage.
Mm.
And a cage is because it's like, if you're in a cage, you can see through the bars, you can see the thing you want, and it always seems perpetually beyond your grasp. And the label on the bars are fear, procrastination, and self-sabotage. And my experience has been that fear has never served me. Procrastination has never accomplished any goal, and
Mm,
self-sabotage has done nothing but feed the story that I suck.
mm,
And
mm,
so, like, trying to do something that goes wrong is better than doing nothing.
mm. 110%. 110%. Yes, absolutely. Because I think, some of us get into those moments where I guess I'll say for me, I mean, of course, we're talking what we see, and I'm sure you're talking about your experiences as well as experiences with clients. Um, it's like there's two voices, maybe more. Some are like yes, and some are like no. But depending on how we feel in that moment, we go to where we are comfortable.
Yep.
Tell me about your experiences, I guess, with how to deal with the comfort zone.
Well, you mentioned David Goggins earlier.
Mhm,
Can't Hurt Me, the book that he
mhm,
wrote about his story and his growing up, and who he has become today. And
mhm,
none of those people that you look at, whether it is a singer or an athlete or an executive or a person who's achieved some level of excellence, I can promise you that none of them got there by living comfortably.
mm,
I can promise you that. There is no such thing. There will be. In fact, depends on who you listen to. Some will say, seek the discomfort zones. If you
mm,
think about physical training, they talk about the muscle growth happens in the last rep when you
mm,
break the muscle fibers, when you're
mm,
straining at that moment. That's when muscle fibers break down and your body recovers by increasing muscle mass. So there's an analog in our spiritual, our energetic, our talent growth, just like there is with our physical growth.
mm, mm. Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. It's so interesting about growth and dealing with the comfort zone. I think in parts of our lives we feel like the comfort zone is there for protection and it's there to hold on to, but the reality is it's that illusion that there's no level beyond it. you know I used to think that even myself at once. I was like, okay, I just need to get comfortable. I need this here. All right, we're good. Everything's good. And then you realize, like, oh, there's a level here, but there's another. And then when you reach that level, oh no, there's another. I heard somebody say once, when you get to the top of the mountain, you realize that you're at the bottom of another.
I think about it. We've all heard stories about chicks pecking their way out of shells, right?
Mm,
If they don't do the struggle of pecking their way out, they die. A
mm,
caterpillar that doesn't do the struggle of getting out of the cocoon
mm,
dies.
mm,
It is in the act of struggle. And we tell those stories and we nod and we go, yeah, 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 uh-huh. And then we retreat to our comfort zone. Here's the grody truth. Me, you, we can live in our comfort zone. You are allowed to do that, and you can stay in there forever.
mm,
And I mean literally forever until you breathe your last breath. What I
mm,
can promise you is that the divine spark, the divine energy, the divine spirit within you will periodically make noise and ask
mm,
you about that next level and
mm.
ask you if you're willing to go to the uncomfortable place to achieve it. You can always say no,
True.
but that will never satisfy you, really.
Mhm. True. Yeah, by you saying you could live in that comfortable space, it kind of gave me chills. I was like, no.
Yeah, it's like, wait a minute, I'm not doing that.
Right. It's so funny because I quit my job last year. So during this whole shift, as we've all been experiencing, I just said, I've had it. I think for me and my personality, I needed that pressure. You know what I mean? I needed to just like feel that. And I was just like, I've had it. I'm gone. I just got out.
Hmm?
And I did have moments. I went into a depression, when I left, and it was the reality that, oh wow, I'm outside of this comfortable space, which is the 9 to 5. That now I actually have to, let's think of acorns. Like I'm not expected to get this many. Let's say, all right, every week you're gonna get 10 acorns, and you have 10 acorns. There's a comfort in that. I got 10 acorns. I'm expecting the 10 acorns, and then all of a sudden you leave that. How do I get my 10 acorns? How do I? Oh, it's like all of a sudden there's this muscle, and I didn't know it was there, and I don't have to use it. It's so funny that we live in these moments and we kind of create these safe little spaces for us, but we don't even know what we have because we never put it ourselves in the space to grow.
Right.
It's
Right.
crazy.
Well, it's a choice. And I mentioned earlier the divine feelings that we all have are always issued as invitations. Like
Mm,
I'm not aware of anyone where, God came down and forced somebody to go do anything.
choices.
Even in my extreme situations where the
Mm,
invitations were pretty loud, I just assumed it's because I'm thick-headed and I needed a 2x4. Okay,
mhm,
fine. But it
mm,
was still an invitation. I could easily have said no. I could easily have said, this is crazy. I could easily have said, are you out of your mind? I'm not doing this. I have no idea what I'll do. And I didn't have any idea. But what
mm,
I knew for sure is where I've been sucks. So I'm not staying
mm.
there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know that feeling. And it's so funny. It's like, as I use the mountain analogy, it's like you keep going. It's like this trajectory. It's like you're a rocket. It's like
Yep.
SpaceX. So, I wanted to talk a little bit about the mental toll right now. So, if you can answer this, are you working with anyone currently that is either experiencing loss or is having trouble adapting to what some people are calling, I don't even know, a pandemic, whatever you want to call it? Like, are you working with anyone that's dealing with the struggles of that time
Mhm.
frame?
Yeah. I have clients that at in different amounts and for different reasons
Mhm.
have experienced a lot of shift, a lot of loss, or a sense of loss
Mm,
because what they were familiar with has changed.
mm,
The way that they work is either gone or
mm,
dramatically changed,
mm,
and they have identified their value so strongly with that particular thing that they suddenly now feel like they don't have value
mm,
or they don't know how to do anything.
mm,
And the the key, or I don't know, to me, when we identify our value with what we do, we miss the point
mm,
because, like a year and a half ago, we didn't have this explosion of delivery people who drive around and deliver stuff. We
mhm,
had some, but
mm,
this pandemic has created a whole new industry,
mhm.
or quadrupled, the quintupled the size of it.
Yeah.
Zoom. I was using Zoom for my coaching calls for clients around the world 5 years before anybody ever heard of it.
Mm,
But when the pandemic struck and I saw people offering Zoom lessons and Zoom coaching, and we'll come into your company and teach you all how to be Zoom experts. And Zoom suddenly
zoomed.
quintupled its use. Yeah. And things zoomed down, right?
Right.
Like the restaurant and travel and tourist industry has crashed, and airplane travel has gotten ridiculously expensive again. And
Mhm.
it's sort of reset everything. And if you attach your value and your what you think you can contribute to, or the enjoyment you get from life, to any of these externalities, then that's a sense of loss. When you finally discover, and this has been recent in the last 10 years for me, so
Mm,
I say that so people don't think that they're late to the party. When you
right.
finally discover that your value is just in being who you are and in
Yes.
creating and adding good to the world and love, then whether or not these externalities change this last 18 months or the next 18 months or the next schmandemic that happens, which there will
Hmm.
be some more, like this
Hmm.
isn't going to be the only one in
Right.
2024 or 5. Some other
Yeah.
weird thing is going to happen and we're going to say, oh, we long for the COVID days because this is even more terrible. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, you know what I mean?
Right.
So get out of the idea that your value is external.
Mm. Yes. I literally have a reminder up here because I was somebody that identified so much in what I did, because that was a little bit of my upbringing. Like, okay, you are worthless if you don't do this. That was literally spoken. So I was just like, oh my God, like I have to, that's when active service became a love language in a sense, because I was just like, okay, if this person does this, then that person's a keeper, but then you ignore everything else. So I have this quote by my buddy here, Aubrey Marcus, and he says, "The moment you base your confidence on your function rather than your essence, you are lost in a nightmare of anxiety. Functions can be replaced. No matter what you do, someone can do it better, except be you. So let your confidence rest in your essence and not your function." That is a reminder for me. And I hope that if anyone has experienced either what you have or even myself, it's realizing, just like you said, to be yourself and be okay and grateful that you exist and that you are here and that you get to have this human experience.
What do you think would happen
Mm,
if people, even just 10% more, became not
mm,
only comfortable, but really in love with who they are? And they simply approached whatever they were doing, whatever that is, from a place of being 10% more comfortable with who they
mm.
are. What do you think would happen?
Oh my goodness. It sounds like we may be in a space of peace.
And what if it were 20, 50? I mean, I'm not even talking about completely accepting who you are and being in love with it,
Right.
although that would be the goal. And so the idea that you have to be either all in or all out.
Mm,
I ask clients all the time, what would it look like if they're trying to increase business or sales or change their relationship or whatever? I ask the question, so what would you do if you took 3% more responsibility
mm,
for that outcome today?
mm,
Like today, just 3% more responsibility for that outcome. What would you do different? And when they
mm,
think of 3%, they can usually think, well, I'd make one more phone call, or I would kind of go fix this thing that went south. And it's a small thing because it's only 3%. I'd say, okay, cool. So if you did that 3% today and you did 3% or 2% more tomorrow, and you kept doing that, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out in 60 to 90 days, you've made a 100% improvement in some
mhm.
little area and then
Yeah.
another area. So it's not like you have to do everything all at once, whatever. Just start somewhere. Take
Yeah.
3% responsibility more for your own happiness
Right.
instead of assigning it out to the weather, to God, the economy, the pandemic, the dork weed on TV that says we're going to whatever. Like,
Yeah.
don't give them authority for your
Right.
happiness.
Mm. You can say that again. We put power and belief into everybody and everything else but ourselves. We actually, and I could attest to that. It's so weird. It's so interesting now. I guess that I have a little more vision than I did before, but it's like I know I'm not the only one. We literally take our power and put it in something or someone else to make the decision for us, so that we don't have accountability of our own decisions. It's it's wild that I think about it now, and I'm pretty sure I could almost have, certain moments where I may even unconsciously do it. But what is that? What do as far as your perception and understanding at this moment?
Well,
What
we only have two
Yeah.
things. What were you going to ask why we did that? I interrupted you. Sorry.
No, I just wanted to say, I guess in a sense, yes. Why is accountability such a struggle?
Something I used to do would be procrastinate
Mhm.
when I was doing a project. And the reason that I would procrastinate is I didn't know that at the time, but I figured it out later. But the reason I would procrastinate and then hurry up and do it at the end is so that if I did it and turned it in, or, put it in the world or handed it to somebody or whatever, and it wasn't quite perfect, or they had some complaints or some revisions or whatever, then I always had the excuse of, well, if I'd put more time and had more time to do it, it would have been better. So I didn't have to go down the road of I did the best I could and it's still not good enough. Because
Mm,
when we do go down that road, we attach our value and worth, and somehow we die a little bit. Like, I really
mm,
do suck. There's no other answer.
mm,
I think part of the putting faith in someone else is, number one, we have a fundamental fear of inadequacy. We
mm,
all seem to have a fundamental fear of inadequacy.
mhm,
And when that inadequacy manifests in terms of we do something and it's not good enough, we also have a mortal fear, like death fear, of that rejection.
mm,
Okay. And so when you realize that failure isn't anything except feedback, IDP, interesting data point, and nothing that was ever useful that was accomplished was without failure. Like, whatever his
right,
name is, Edison 1,000 times to make the light bulb and all the rest of the
right.
stories. Okay. Like, if we even a little bit took failure as a joyful experience, instead of good, bad, if we said work doesn't work, functional,
Mhm,
non-functional, instead of right, wrong, good, bad, because we
mm,
have the baggage with those other words. So go to functional, non-functional. Did it work? Did
mm,
it not work? Instead of attaching value to us, we are afraid of that judgment. And in its ultimate sense, that's what drives people to suicide, because you go to the
mm,
mirror and you look. I know, because I tried a couple times during the midst of all that horror. You
mm,
look in the mirror and you say, they're right. There's no escape. I have no more excuses. I am the root of all evil. I am the cause of all the misery. I shouldn't be here because they are
mhm,
right. I am that evil. I am the ultimate wrong. There's no escape. And when you get to that place, there's no name for that feeling. And so I gave it a name, and the name I call it is the name of the black.
mm, mm. Name of the Black. Yeah, I've been there myself as well. It was, I was attaching to the idea that I am not worthy without function, and I am not worthy without doing. Therefore, who needs me if I'm not doing something?
Right.
And everything was outside of me, outside of me. There was no idea of ownership, accountability, nothing. It was everything is outside of me. And it wasn't until, I started to awaken by reading Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now that I started to realize, oh, I do have control over me. Like, it's mine. It's me. But there's this entity that I didn't call the divine until recently, but I just have to like listen for it, and it happens in certain moments. It's interesting. It's very interesting.
Well, that developmental process is something we all are doing. And you asked about that earlier, about forgiveness and love. Everybody is on that road somewhere. Like, we're not born
Mhm.
enlightened. as babies, we're helpless. We need all kinds of stuff or we die very quickly. So we grow up physically and pretty soon we can take care of food and not messing our pants, but our spiritual, emotional, intellectual development is all at different paces, and it has a lot to do with what we experience on the outside and all kinds of other stuff. And there comes a moment, if you look for it, when you realize that you're of infinite value.
Mm-hmm.
You are worth infinity. You don't have to do anything. You just are. Now,
Yes.
when you know that, no one who really knows that they're a child of the divine is then satisfied with sitting around and doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
When you know that, then you have the desire to do all kinds of things that are good and come from that knowledge. So it's not like, okay, I'm worth infinite, so I can just sit here and be worth infinite. Nobody feels that way. As soon as you realize who you really are, well, then you got all kind of stuff you want to go do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
I
so
love
the
it,
idea,
Kellan.
when you say, okay, I'm worth infinite, so I'll just sit here and be worth infinite, except for it doesn't work that way. Because the minute you truly connect with that and you become
Right.
present, Eckhart Tolle said, when you get in there and you realize you're infinite, you're divine, you have limitless capability, then you understand that, then it's like, holy crap, I got all kinds of stuff to do today, and today's too short.
Yeah. It's so interesting. You're so right. Because it's like as you start to live your truth and I like that you talk about how important it is to really like understand what your purpose is. Like ask those questions and make those decisions. Like you talk about that. I listen to your show and you're like really understand because there's so many layers. Like I think everybody has different layers. Everyone. But there are layers. Everybody has different ones, whether it's past, present, whatever, fear, whatever it is. There's these different layers. And once you sit and you really start to ask, you can connect with the source. And the source is like this. I don't even know. It's just like all of a sudden, it's like, I know exactly what I need to do. And then all of a sudden, you're just like in a place where, oh my God, I gotta write a book. I gotta do this. I gotta do this. Like you don't have time. Like literally, the time is not there to delay. The time is there to act.
That goes back to your procrastination. Procrastination only comes when you don't have that knowledge and you're living in fear. The minute you connect with who you really are, a divine being with infinite capability, there's no such thing as procrastination and there's no such thing as fear because you know to the core of your being that you're a divine being and you have something to do to add good to the world. Add good to the world is just the phrase I use that means a conscious choice to do something in service of others and helping and loving and being and all that jazz. And so then you stop worrying about it and you stop worrying about who likes what. Okay, you don't like it. That's fine. Somebody will, because you know that. Because your value isn't coming from you telling me you like it. It's coming from in you because this is what you know you need to do. And okay, I didn't find the right person yet. That's okay. I love you anyway. Where's the next person?
Right. It's so interesting, Kellan, because the other day I was listening to your story about how you met Joy is radiating in my mind. It's so interesting these moments that happen. I think, Steve. Oh, what is his name? Steve Harvey. Steve Harvey had an amazing story about how he met his wife, and she was just sitting in the crowd, and he just told her, like, I'm going to marry you one day. And he ended up, I think he was married 2 and 3 times before he actually married the person that he said, I'm going to marry you one day. 2. I just feel like these moments happen, and it's just like, I don't know, it just feels right. It feels on point. It's like a pinpoint.
Well, think about what that causes people to do. So my wife, Joy, she was a project manager. She has a degree in art and design. She's very well traveled. She done a lot of European travel, a lot of history. Her dad was an archaeologist, very like hip and knowledgeable and self-sufficient, not needy, not looking for something. That's who she was. And she had one of those moments and said, okay, I'm going to drop all of this stuff and walk off into the sunset with some drug addict nutcase
Mm,
because I just see that light.
mm, mm.
And so I say that because it's real life. It's not some imaginary thing. Like she walked away from everything she knew
Mm.
and said, okay, what are we going to do? I have no idea. Okay, let's figure it out.
Beautiful.
I, when it first happened,
Mm,
I was still employed, right? And so she knew
mm,
me as big dog, high ranking, make a lot of money. And then I resigned.
mm,
And before it was after the concert, but before she had quit.
mm.
After I resigned, I walked into her office and I closed the door and I looked right at her and I said, I want to give you a chance to reconsider everything. I said, I don't know what you thought you got into,
Mm.
but I just quit. And I have no idea where I'm going or what I'm doing. And so if you thought I want to make sure you know the train you're getting on.
Oh my
I want to
God.
give you a chance to change your mind right now
Mm,
before you go do whatever you're going to do. And
mm,
she looked right at me and she said, I'm in.
mm.
That was it.
Oh man, that's beautiful. You're bringing tears to my eyes. Oh man, I love it. You know, it's. I have to say, those moments, like when somebody makes that decision to 100% believe in you, I'll tell you, for me, it actually like I don't know how to say it. I'm gonna try and find the words, but for me, it's like sometimes I want to go, "Are you sure?" Because that's like that version of me where it's like, or the pain, I guess, of not being enough. Like you really want, like I don't have all the things that you know I showed you before, like the outside things. Like I don't have that. I do have the inner things, but I guess it's that undoing of putting the value in the function, you know, and
Well,
realizing like, wow, like somebody's
I'd never
actually
had anybody do that in my life. I'm 53
mm,
years old. I've been
mm,
married and divorced 3
yeah,
times and had other
mm,
relationships. And to have
mm,
her do that at that moment,
yeah, mm,
like everything changed.
yeah,
Yeah, I get it. I'm in.
yeah, yeah. Oh man, yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful moment. Yeah, that's all I could say. I had that same moment, not like that, but I only can speak for myself. It's to me, it was unreal. It was unreal. And then you start to realize like you do deserve the best. You do.
Well, if you realize, as you are now realizing and do, you're a
Mm,
daughter of the divine, God, whatever you
mhm,
want to call it. So if
mm,
you're a daughter of the divine, what are you not able to or entitled to have if you're willing to go get it?
mm, mm,
Like, I don't care what the story was before for me,
mm.
you, or anybody.
Right.
Okay, you sucked. You did this, you did that. That's all in the
Right.
past. The future is really unwritten, and it is never an extension of the past unless you allow it. The pen is in
Mm,
your hand, the page is blank. You are capable of creating anything. What will you write today?
mm. Heck yeah. Heck yeah. Kellen, is there anything else as we conclude that you would like to add?
Yeah, anybody that wants to connect with me, having a name like Kellan Fluckiger makes me really easy to find. So my website, I had no trouble getting kellanfluckiger.com. And
Amazing.
if you Google my name, there won't be confusion about who's there. There are only 2 out of 8 billion, and the other one is my son, and he's quite a bit younger than me. So
Right.
on Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube or anything. Kellan Fluckiger's the ticket. Because of that name, when I was at the height of my stuff, I was one of those one name people. Like
Mm,
CEOs would get together in meetings, and the only question is Kellan coming? Partly
mm.
because my last name was unpronounceable, and partly because everybody knew who the frick Kellan was in my industry. Right. So I was,
Right,
is Kellan coming? And if Kellan's not coming yet, different people would come. Yeah. The bosses ain't, yeah, whatever. Send somebody else. If Kellan's coming, he makes decisions and stuff. Okay. Yeah, we need to go.
right.
And so the blessing of having Kellan Fluckiger as a name is I'm really easy to find. Anybody that wants to connect or to listen to my podcast, Your Ultimate Life, or Ultimate Life Formula is a YouTube channel, or Amazon Me. I got all those books and crap. If
Mm.
anything I've said interests you, sparks you, lifts you, makes you want to be more of yourself, then heed that call. Don't ignore it.
Heck yeah. And you have also a book coming out in February.
Something like that. Not the date isn't for sure. The first draft's done. It's in editing right now, so probably February. Called Forgiveness: A Journey of Courage to a Place of Freedom and Power.
Absolutely. Kellan, thank you so much for sharing this beautiful moment with me. I'm so grateful for it. And I hope we get to speak again soon.
Well, we'll be as connected as you choose to have us be.
Heck yeah. Thank you so much, Kellan. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Thank you. And I again want to honor you for the good that you are adding to the world.
Thank you. And you as well, Kellan. Thank you so much.